Who do you think you are? There's a whole TV series based on that title. Famous celebrities are helped to discover their ancestors. Some are horrified to find that great-granddad was an axe murderer. Others are delighted to find they are related to a nurse who gave her life in serving. However, there's still an underlying assumption that our identity depends solely on our roots. So, who do you think you are? In the past, we were all called to know our place. When in 1848, Mrs. Alexandra published her popular hymn, All Things Bright and Beautiful, she had no compunction in including the verse, "The rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate. God made them high and lowly, and ordered their estate." It was assumed that the Almighty created a static society where your identity was fixed at birth. However, we do have to be realistic that there are limits. No matter how ambitious I might be, I was never going to be an Olympic runner. Today's Gospel follows a similar question. In verse 20, Jesus asked his friends, "Who do you say I am?" His opponents might have answered by looking at his roots. This is the carpenter's son from Nazareth, and we know nothing good can come from there. Up to this point, Jesus has been teaching and healing in Galilee, so equally his followers might have looked at the past and said, "You are a prophet, a teacher, or a healer." Now it's true that Peter sees deeper and answers that Jesus is the Messiah, but he still hasn't understood what that really means. Now, a few verses later, in today's Gospel, the question of Jesus' identity is answered, not by looking into the past, but to the future. He takes his three closest companions, Peter, James and John, up a mountain to pray. There, we are told, his face changes. There is a dazzling splendour about him, as is seen with Moses and Elijah. The shining cloud of God's mysterious presence overshadows them. The question, "Who do you think you are?" is now answered by the divine voice. "This is my Son, my chosen." He is the beloved who embodies the very being of God. We might therefore conclude that our identity is linked not with our beginning, but with our end point. Our true identity is to become the person God intends us to be. But if we go back to the Gospel, it's a bit more complicated than that. The three companions are overcome with awe at the sight of the Transfiguration. Peter wants to capture the moment of glory and make it permanent. He speaks of building 3 shelters. Perhaps he's thinking of stone temples as lasting memorials to this momentous revelation. "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Certainly, if this gospel was written in Hollywood, then the Transfiguration would be the climax on which the story ended. Jesus' true identity is revealed. Cue heavenly music. Cue curtains. And fade. But that's not the way it is. The Transfiguration comes not at the end, but halfway through this gospel. This is only a stage in the process. The clouds fade, the vision departs. The disciples find Jesus alone. They must come down from the mountain and continue the journey. There is still the suffering of the cross. There is still the resurrection and ascension. So we may agree that our identity is not fixed at birth, but still make the error of thinking the future is set in stone. We mustn't make the mistake of thinking that somewhere in the Almighty's mind there is a fixed, unchangeable identity for me. God doesn't have a checklist in which he ticks off his divine plan. Like Peter, we can be in danger of thinking that one stage of the journey is the final fixed destination. Our identity is not a fixed static point any more than it is fixed by a static past. A plant is drawn by the light and warmth of the sun. Yet not every detail of a tree is predestined. A branch may grow here. There may be more or less leaves. There is no preset master plan for that tree. True, if deprived of the warmth and light of the sun, it will not flourish. But there is still flexibility and an openness about the details of its growth. Equally, there is no one pre-existent model of what God intends us to be. Yes, our purpose is to grow in the direction of God's love, but there is no static master plan, no stage, however glorious, that is set in stone. Who do you think you are? I am a work in progress. I am a plant drawn by the warmth and light of God, but with the freedom to grow in my own way. We are not defined by our past. We are not predestined by our future. Rather, as St. Paul reminds us, we are in the process of being transformed by the Lord from one degree of glory to another. Amen.